Marston's Domain.
Hey everyone, Marson here, and today I'm going to be making my favorite to least favorite Donkey Kong Country list. Now the reason why I want to do my favorite to my least favorite instead of the other way around is because I feel like people that know my channel or know me in general, or just people that know Donkey Kong Country fans in general, I feel like the favorites tend to be similar, so I thought it'd be interesting to start with the favorites and then go to the least favorites and talk about why I think they're my least favorite. So without further ado, let's get started. So my all-time favorite Donkey Kong Country game is definitely Donkey Kong Country 2. I feel like I have more nostalgia for Donkey Kong Country 1, but Donkey Kong Country 2 as a game, to me, is just perfect. The collectibles are fun to get, the overworld design is incredible, the level design is incredible, the soundtrack, to me, I think is the best soundtrack in video game history. I really just don't feel that it's been topped. I think David Wise is a genius. He's the one that composed the music for this game, and I still think of these songs all the time. And then when it comes to the characters that you play as, I think this game nailed that too, because they brought Diddy Kong back, and Diddy Kong was my favorite from the first game, and then they introduced Dixie Kong, and she became my favorite Kong, period. Twirling her hair was the most fun. And what's interesting is that over the years watching speedrunning, I've learned that Diddy Kong is faster, and normally I care more about speed. And I must have just had so much fun with Dixie's mechanics that I really just used to choose Dixie Kong all the time. Most of my memories are about Dixie Kong when it comes to that game. So it's interesting that I must have never even realized that Diddy Kong could go faster because I just had so much fun with Dixie Kong's mechanics. So Donkey Kong Country 2 for me is by far my favorite Donkey Kong Country game. So next up on this list is the first Donkey Kong Country. Like I said earlier, I definitely think I have the most nostalgia for this one. There's a lot of old home video recordings I remember watching of me playing the game, and my most notorious one was I used to say, I can't get past the eagle. I thought the vultures were eagles, and instead of anyone telling me that they weren't because they thought it was cute, they never told me. So it took a long time for me to finally go, wait a minute, they're not eagles. So that's a thing. But it wasn't too long before I was able to get past things that other people couldn't. And I know that that's the game that started everything, because that was the one that my mom decided to get when I was a kid, when there were two versions of Super Nintendo. There was the Mario one and the Donkey Kong one. She chose that one because she remembered playing Donkey Kong in the arcade. That changed everything. That's what led to me being a K. Rool main. That's what led to me loving Donkey Kong Country. So I owe a lot to this game, and I know that that's not really something that you should really put into play when making some of these lists, but it's a huge part of my life, honestly, because it started everything. I mean, who knows? Maybe I wouldn't even have this channel if I didn't play that as a kid. And if you want a more in-depth story on that, I actually have a video on how I started with Donkey Kong Country and everything. But in terms of the game itself, I think the music is great. It's not a million levels lower than Donkey Kong Country 2, but it's just not my favorite if I had to compare the two, but it's still absolutely incredible. There's a lot of songs from that game that I still think about all the time, so it's still way up there like Donkey Kong Country 2. The level designs are really unique, the overworld is cool. I think the King K. Rool fight in this game is probably the most nostalgic and memorable, although I think I do prefer Donkey Kong Country 2's King K. Rool battle. But this one being the first, and the way that he pretends to die, and just the whole thing, I don't think it could be any more perfect for a first game. And I would say my only gripe with the game is that, as funny as this sounds, I'm not actually the biggest fan of Donkey Kong himself. I don't dislike him or anything, but if there's someone else that I can choose, I usually do, depending on who I can choose. So I didn't really play as Donkey Kong much at all. So with Donkey Kong Country 2, being able to play as Diddy or Dixie Kong, two Kongs that I really liked, I think that kind of just puts it a little bit above Donkey Kong Country 1. But I would like to reiterate that Donkey Kong Country 2 is not miles ahead of Donkey Kong Country 1. I love both of those games. 100% in the game is still fun. The game is still amazing. Next up on this list, which I think is going to shock some people, is actually Donkey Kong Country 3. I was thinking about this for a while, and I'll get into my reasons on why the other ones are after this, but Donkey Kong Country 3 is a really, really good game. And I think a lot of people just kind of pushed it to the side because is it as good as the first two? In my opinion, no. But I think there's multiple reasons for that. Because when it comes to the platforming, it's there. The platforming is there, the gameplay is there, and I think this was the start of really showcasing that we loved the Donkey Kong Country world that was being built. This game, to me, was a good chunk different from the first two games. Because in Donkey Kong Country 2, it definitely looks different and feels different, but with that, it still feels like it's within that world. The graphics aren't drastically different, the character designs aren't drastically different. It feels like this is a continuation of Donkey Kong Country, and this feels like the Donkey Kong Country universe. When it comes to the Kremlings, when it comes to the Kongs, just the whole thing. In Donkey Kong Country 3, I think the art style alone really kind of pushed some people to not feel like it was Donkey Kong Country's universe. At least for me. I could say that for me, but I'm trying to look into why this game was always pushed to the side. I know that it being released late in the Super Nintendo's lifespan did not help it, but to me there are a lot of factors, or at least some factors, that really make it not feel like the trilogy, or like the impact of the first two. Because obviously it's part of the trilogy. It's a good game. It's really, really good. But needing to go to the bears to talk to them and get these different items, and you go on this fetch quest kind of thing. When I was a kid, I just wanted to play the game. So it's a miracle that I even figured that stuff out, because I probably wasn't even reading anything. It was probably all just guessing. But the enemies, to me, I never really liked the way they looked. I liked how the animal buddies still were there and they still looked good, but even that though, they brought in Ellie, which she could have been cool. But I think the way that they utilized her made it not that fun, and Rambi wasn't in the game, and it just makes me think I would have rather have just had Rambi. I think if they made Ellie more like Rambi's gameplay, except with one unique feature, like if she felt more like Rambi but had the water mechanic, I think that would have been a lot of fun. And just moving the barrels and stuff with her trunk, I think that would have been fun. But instead, the movement wasn't fun to me. And then the ultimate thing. So I said with Donkey Kong Country 1, I don't dislike Donkey Kong, but he's definitely not my favorite, and I'll just play someone else. I do not like Kiddy Kong. I thought Kiddy Kong was not a good addition. I didn't find him fun to play. I didn't like listening to him cry. I don't really like his design. I don't like Kiddy Kong. And sometimes people give me a hard time when I talk about that on the internet, that I don't like that Kong. But what's interesting is growing up, I don't remember anyone talking about that Kong or liking that Kong. And it makes me wonder if there's just some hardcore fans of that game that talk about that, because I really do think Kiddy Kong was a little bit of a reason why some people weren't the biggest fans of this game. Because to me, the movement's not fun. I really don't like the Kong in general. So then you have Dixie Kong, which she's my favorite. But I think to go from Donkey Kong Country 2, having two really, really cool Kongs, to going to Donkey Kong Country 3, which in my opinion, out of all three of the games, had one of the worst Kongs, I think it had an effect. So I like that they tried something different, but I think if they kept it within the Donkey Kong Country universe, which, you know, they did. I mean, you're still fighting Kremlings and K. Rool, but there were enough differences to where, to me, it didn't feel like that. And I think that's the reason why a lot of people don't really enjoy this game as much, even if they don't realize those are the reasons. And again, I would like to say, the game itself, in terms of how it plays, I really do like it. I like it a lot. But it's the random stuff you gotta do, and the art style and everything put together, it's just, to me, nowhere near as good as the first two. So the next game on this list is Tropical Freeze. And I think this is where people are going to be shocked that I put Donkey Kong Country 3 above Tropical Freeze, because I say a lot of good things about Tropical Freeze. The gameplay is amazing. I love that there's time trials. I love that you can verse people online with the time trials on the leaderboards. I like that you can look at the replays of other people's attempts on the leaderboards. I like how collecting the Kong letters actually has more of a purpose in this game. But there are some factors with this game that make me not be able to rank it up higher. So my biggest thing with this game that I want to talk about first off is I really, really don't like how the Kongs work in this game and Returns, but we're going to get to that one. But I don't like how you just play as Donkey Kong and the other Kongs just join you. In my opinion, not to give a spoiler, this game's been out forever, but when you beat the game, you unlock hard mode. And hard mode, to me, is when the game really feels like Donkey Kong Country, because you can choose what Kong you play as. That is when I've had the most fun with this game, because you can just play as solo Dixie Kong, solo Cranky Kong, solo Diddy Kong, or solo Donkey Kong. At least I think you can play as solo Donkey Kong. I'm assuming you can if you can play the other ones. I don't even remember, because all I played was Dixie Kong. Being able to play as solo Dixie Kong in that game was awesome to me. I really do prefer playing the hard mode over the regular mode, because I don't want to play with a Kong on my back helping me. I really did not like that change when it comes to the newer Donkey Kong Country games. And I also think that the bonuses in these games are nowhere near as good as the original trilogy. I do not enjoy doing the bonuses in Tropical Freeze as much as I did in the original trilogy at all. And with the music, it's obviously good, and I think I'm going to get some flack for this, but it's not as memorable to me as the original trilogy. And I don't know if it's just that older video game music was just shorter and it could just get stuck in your head easier. I don't really know what it is, but the tracks just feel a lot longer, and it's harder for me to just remember them on the fly and be like, damn, I love that song. When I've done some of my K. Rool montages and was looking at some of the music, that's when I was like, oh, wow, this is really good. But when playing through the game, none of it really just stuck with me. And that could just be a difference of how I play games now. A lot of times I have a headset on and the TV volume's on. I mean, there's different factors. When you're a kid, you were just sitting there in front of the TV and that was all you were doing. So, I mean, there could be factors to it. Because like I said, when I did the montages, a lot of the songs I heard, I was like, damn, this is really, really good. So again, it's not that I ever thought the music was bad. To me, it just doesn't feel as memorable. And now for one of the biggest things on why this game is ranked where it is in this list. There are no Kremlings. And I know there's going to be some people that are probably already mad that I just said that, because there's going to be people that are going to say, well, they did their own thing and it looks good or whatever. To me, I don't see why they can't just mix Kremlings in with their own enemy designs. To me, it is not really Donkey Kong Country without the Kremlings, and I think it calls back to my explanation on Donkey Kong Country 3. I think art style has a huge impact on if it feels like a Donkey Kong Country game or not, even if people didn't realize it. I really think that that is part of why people did not click with Donkey Kong Country 3 as much as they did the first two. And with this game, with having no Kremlings, it's not just about art style, it's about there's no Kremlings. I think it's a huge problem. There's no K. Rool, which K. Rool is the one that a lot of people look at when they look at Donkey Kong Country. So to have no K. Rool, no Kremlings, and you just have these penguins, to me, it's not as impactful. When I play that game, I don't remember the enemies or care. I remember playing the original Donkey Kong Country games, and the sound effects alone of when you kill an enemy was awesome. K. Rool's sound effects were awesome. The whole thing was just fun to do. It was fun to hear those noises. And with this game, it's just like, yeah, there's enemies. It's like you're just going through them just because they're enemies. It's not memorable to me. I don't like the main boss of Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze. The only boss I really liked was the pufferfish, and that's just because I like underwater stuff. So I really think if they make a new one and they bring the Kremlings back, even if they mix it in with new enemies that they have, I think the game would be gigantic. Because in terms of gameplay, this game is incredible. It is one of the best platformers for sure, in terms of gameplay. But with all those other points that I've made, I just can't rank it any higher. And to go to the last game on this list, which is obviously Donkey Kong Country Returns, this game to me was so underwhelming. Because I remember when this was announced, and one of my friends told me that the Angry Video Game Nerd talked about it and said that it was okay. And I was like, really? And I'm a huge fan of the Angry Video Game Nerd, and I knew that he loved Donkey Kong Country. So when I heard him say that, I was like, how could that be possible? We finally got the game back. And when the game came out, because that was when he was at E3 or whatever and tried it, when the game came out and I played it, I slowly started to realize, yeah, I know what he's talking about. To me, it really didn't feel like a return. That was the first experience of having a Kong on your back, which I said earlier I don't like. It was only Diddy Kong, so that already made it not as fun because you can't play as Diddy Kong. He's just on your back, and he's the only Kong there that you can have. And the enemy design to me was horrible. I did not like the Tiki Mask enemies at all. At least with Tropical Freeze, I enjoyed those enemies more. In Returns, I did not like the enemy design at all. I didn't like the Tiki Masks, I didn't like any of it. I thought it was really boring. And in terms of gameplay, you have to shake the Wii Remote to roll. That's not what I want to do. When I'm playing Donkey Kong Country, which is, in my opinion, one of the best platformers ever made, I don't want to shake the Wii Remote to roll. That's not what I want to do. I get that the Wii was all about motion controls, but this was one game where it should have been an option. It really should have. It drives me crazy that a part of a platformer involves shaking the controller. And some people are probably going to give me flack for complaining about that so much, but to me it's a big deal. The way I play those games is not shaking the controller. I want to have tight controls. So no Kremlings, I don't like the controls, and the Kong on your back, and not to mention, I don't really remember any levels at all from that game. I played it years ago, but I don't remember anything from that game. It didn't leave a lasting impression, and you would think that the return to the series would have been a huge deal for me. But I would like to also reiterate that just because it's last on my list doesn't mean that I think the game is garbage or anything. It's just definitely not my favorite at all. So that's my list of favorite to least favorite Donkey Kong Country games. Hopefully you enjoyed this. This was actually a lot longer than I thought it was going to be. But hopefully you made it to the end of this video and enjoyed it. Let me know what your lists are in the comment section down below. And if you want to keep up to date on my videos, feel free to subscribe. And until next time, I'll see you all later. Take care, everyone.